Welcome back, everyone. We're going to start discussing neurologic emergencies by first reviewing the anatomy and physiology of the neurologic system. As a reminder, for the National EMS Education Standard competencies for medical emergencies, we need to be able to apply fundamental knowledge and provide emergency care and transportation based on the assessment findings for an acutely ill patient. Specifically, for neurologic emergencies, we need to understand the anatomy, the presentations, and the management of decreased level of responsiveness, seizure, stroke, and the anatomy, physiology, pathophysiology, assessment, and management of stroke, transient ischemic attack, seizure, status epilepticus, and headache. When we look at the structures of the neurologic system, we primarily divide them into two main categories: the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system contains the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system has the rest of the nerves that are distributed throughout the body. The peripheral nervous system communicates information from the body to the central nervous system, where we process that information and respond accordingly. The central nervous system is also responsible for thought, perception, feeling, and autonomic body functions. The central nervous system is further divided into two parts: the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is the voluntary muscular control, so movement of your arms and your legs, your hands, while the autonomic nervous system is responsible for all the essential core functions that are occurring within the body. We further divide the autonomic nervous system into the sympathetic or the fight or flight system, and the parasympathetic system, the rest and relax system, or the feed and breed system. It's responsible predominantly for hunger and sexual drive and reproduction. When evaluating the brain, we can break apart the brain into specific areas called lobes. The occipital lobe scans through images, while the temporal lobe attaches a name and sort of acts as a filing system for those images. The frontal lobe controls voluntary motion through the afferent and efferent nerves. Efferent nerves convey commands to the body, while afferent nerves send signals of discomfort. The parietal lobes receive touch and pain. Moving deeper into the brain structure, we have the diencephalon and the brainstem. The diencephalon helps filter out unneeded information, and the brainstem is responsible for most of the body's core functions. The brainstem can further be divided into the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. The midbrain helps regulate levels of consciousness and frees the cerebral cortex for higher activities such as cognitive thought and processing. The hypothalamus and the pituitary gland help control the limbic system and generates rage and anger. The hypothalamus controls things like pleasure, thirst, and hunger. The prefrontal cortex mediates all emotions and allows people to choose how they act and how they respond into ways that they feel. The cerebellum is located in the posterior inferior area of the skull, and it manages complex motor activity. Things like learned behaviors are then transferred from the frontal lobe for processing and use. You can see that the spinal cord attaches at the base of the brain and exits the skull through the foramen magnum and travels down the spinal cord until it comes to the very low end of the spine, where it branches into a structure called the cauda equina. Looking at the vessels of the brain, you can see here that the brain is a very vascular organ. This becomes important when we start to look at things like strokes and transient ischemic attacks or hemorrhagic strokes, as the skull is a cavity that is enclosed, and any bleeding that occurs within the skull cavity can cause an increased pressure in the brain.